there, everybody. Let's see if we can get some cameras going here. There we go. Um, we are once again going to try the what I look at as the alternate format for Good Natured Hour. I just didn't have a chance today to assemble a slideshow, so we're going to flip over in just a minute to roundup of Google photos that I took over the last week or so. But I know this is the time when everybody's kind of getting settled and you need that 30 seconds or so. So I'm going to hold up. These are things on my desk, some nature objects. We've got a deer bone, makes a dandy pointer if you're doing a presentation. And I had some of last year's hazelnuts. I don't know why the squirrels didn't eat them. This is the first time I ever actually found hazelnuts that were not chewed on. Gorgeous husks on these nuts. Hazelnuts actually were just blooming recently, so something to look for if you head on out. Got a carving of an eagle from my friend James, and a duck call, which means it's time to get started. Let's go ahead. I've got lots of stuff to share, and also some announcements of some important dates on plant sales that are coming up this weekend. So with that, folks, let's go ahead and see if I can find some slides here to share with you once I get the screen share going. All right. There we go. Can everybody see the dead thing? All right, I'm going to switch over to our slideshow format. If I can get around the box here. There we go. All right, so Laura, I know you had mentioned a couple weeks ago that your daughter Elizabeth and her friend rescued a beaver that was on the Illinois Bridge in downtown St. Charles. This is what happens when somebody does not rescue a beaver. This was on Fabian. This was on Fabian Parkway, just west of Route 31 the other day. I think I've mentioned to you how when I'm driving around I play Roadkill bingo, and there's the common, there's the squirrel and the opossum, the raccoon, the skunk. This time of year there's also a lot of robins and sometimes some cardinals. But this beaver is, I look at this one as it's somewhat seasonal, it's somewhat unusual. It is somewhat unfortunate, but I wonder if we're going to be seeing a few more of these because of the way we have so much beaver activity right now, which indicates we probably have so many beavers. So keep your eyes open. If you see something a little bit larger than, say, an opossum, maybe the size of a raccoon, but much, much darker fur, give it a second look. It might be, you can add a beaver to your roadkill bingo scorecard. This was a follow-up. I took this picture the other day. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, I showed you the picture of the egg case from the Argiope spider. I found it encased in some silk. It was attached to the clematis vine that I was trimming the other day. Well, I found this, and you can see right here in the center, there's a large opening. That tells me that the spiderlings aren't in there anymore, but they didn't leave on their own. I have a feeling, and I may have been responsible for this, that when I moved it, maybe I put it back in a place that was more obvious. Now, I couldn't tell. I spent more time than I probably should have trying to figure out who it was that chewed open this egg sac, or pecked open. That's what I was trying to decide. Is this a bite? It almost looked like it was torn, which would indicate a bird as opposed to a mammal. But anyway, this particular egg case from that Argiope or garden spider last summer didn't survive. I'm hoping that she produced another one that's was better hidden. But I'll just have to wait and see. But be keeping my eyes open this summer to see if I have another Argiope there by the front door. Little tadpole update. Little Tad did go back to the nature center last week, but you could see that he or she has sprouted back legs. And here's a side view showing I would say the tadpole put on close to an inch while he or she was staying at my house. We'll keep our fingers crossed that little Tad continues to do well and that later on this summer we'll end up with a bullfrog. Let's see, let me go back one here. I thought we'd be able to see the gills. So there's a gill opening on the side of the tadpole's head, right about where the cursor is. If you can see the cursor, it's a little bit down from the eye, maybe around 7 o'clock or so if you use that way of direction. But they are at this point still breathing through gills, but as the legs start to develop, when the front legs punch out from the front, we're going to have to rethink this aquatic setup and start making arrangements because of part of this dramatic metamorphosis they undergo includes going from taking oxygen out of the water through gills to breathing air with lungs. So I'm sure I'll be able to bring you some more updates on the bullfrog as it matures, but just thought you'd want to see where it's at right now. Now now we're going to start our virtual walk. This was the Nature Nerd outing last Friday at Bliss Woods Forest Preserve, which is off of Bliss Road, just a little bit east of 47 in Sugar Grove. And poking around in the leaf litter, look what we found. This is an American millipede. Now, you probably are familiar with millipedes. You probably get them in your garage or your basement, or you've seen them under rocks or logs. The vast majority of those smaller millipedes, those ones that are like maybe an inch or two in length, are non-native. Most of them come from Europe. They've come in as we've brought plants from other countries, and they're pretty ubiquitous across the United States. But the American millipede, it's not rare in the case that it's threatened or endangered, but it does have certain types of habitats that it prefers. We don't see it throughout Kane County. We do see it in areas where we've got lots of mature trees, nice relatively undisturbed layers of leaf litter. Now, this poor millipede, it was going about its millipede business when I came across it, and when I touched it, it went into this defensive posture. So it's got the exoskeleton on the outside of the body, which helps protect it from predators, marauding naturalists, things that are getting a little too uncomfortably close. But then it does coil up, and this underneath part, the exoskeleton does not adequately protect the underside of the millipede, so it curls up in a defense like this. It is not one of the cyanide millipedes. We do have, and maybe this weekend I'll be going to Johnson's Mound. Johnson's Mound has some really nice cyanide millipedes, which I know sounds dreadful, but cyanide isn't one of your more friendly sounding words, but cyanide is a component of the defensive chemical that those millipedes have. They actually have some bright yellow coloring, a warning coloration. If I can get a picture of those this weekend, I'll share that with you next week. But anyway, we've disturbed this little guy. I did go back in the archives and I found another millipede picture from a few years back. Look at all of those little legs. Millipedes and centipedes, they have several differences. They both have multiple legs. Neither one of them is considered an insect. They're myriapods because they have many, many legs. But a centipede will have one pair of legs per body segment. And a centipede is a predator. They have the first pair of legs on their body is modified into a set of fangs that they use to inject venom, and it's how they subdue their prey. Millipedes, however, they fall more in the decomposer end of the food chain spectrum. You find them, in leaf litter. In fact, as I was reading up a little bit on the habits of the American millipede, I found that they will the females will shred leaves and make a little nest in which they deposit just one egg, and then I'm guessing that they go to make another nest and they deposit another egg. I would guess that their reproductive output is more than one egg per year, but I thought it was interesting because the millipedes we have in our basements and garages, they generally put a lot of eggs out at one time. But you can see, you can kind of see at this picture that there's multiple segments, and every time the millipede molts, it adds more body segments. So the bigger the millipede, the older the millipede. And they can live, something like 8 to 10 or 11 years. So they can get to be, say, 5 or more inches long. So again, much larger than what we see in our houses. But look at the body segments, and if you look closely, I don't know if there's any way I can zoom in. I don't think there is. But the millipedes will have 2 legs per body segment. So it's another thing to check for if you're looking at something that has many legs. If you can, generally speaking, the millipede legs are short and the centipede legs are long, but if you're at all confused, just look at how many segments or how many legs are coming out from each segment. 2 pairs per segment, you've got a millipede. 1 pair per segment, you've got a centipede. Oh, and if it's biting you, it's a centipede too. All right, let's move along. So Bliss Woods contains remnants of what was once a very grand and is still a mighty impressive glacial formation called an Esker. This is a part of the Kaneville Esker. It looks a lot like say, a railroad embankment or a berm that was built there. But this is a deposit. It's a long ridge-like deposit that was left behind as the glaciers receded back 10 to 12,000 years ago. Here's tech support puppy there for some scale. And then, took a side trip to some sedges. We'll get back to that in a second. Here's some nature nerds for scale. It's a pretty steep climb up the side of this Esker. The trail itself is littered with rocks, which is what the glaciers also left behind. So a mixed deposit of stones or rocks, boulders, rocks as big as your head, and then smaller pieces from that, but very neat and not so very common sign of the glacial activity that was in this area. Okay, let's go back to the sedge. We saw this by the side of the bike trail, which goes through one side of Bliss Woods. It is the Virgil Gilman Trail that goes on into Aurora. This was a sedge that we were kind of puzzling over. I was hoping that maybe it was a sedge that we will be offering for sale at our Hickory Knolls plant sale on Saturday, June 4th. I sent it off to our plant experts, Ryan and Jill, and they identified it as pen sedge, which we're not selling. But this is a time of year when sedges are in flower or blooming. And they, at a quick glance, you think you're looking at a grass, but those seed heads, the flowers, the way they form, the male and the female parts are right above. One is right above the other, and it's a neat arrangement. The common way to remember whether you're looking at a sedge or not, if you touch that stem that has the reproductive parts on it, if you feel it in your fingertips, it has edges. Sedges have edges. They're a triangular shaped stem, which is different from a blade of grass or a round reed. So kind of a cool thing. Lots of many different types of sedges. I think at our plant sale, we're going to have 3 or 4 different types, and then we've got some other local plant sales that we'll share with you later. There might be some sedges there too that you can pick up to add to your yard. They add a lot of interest, not just in the growing season, but also as we get into fall and then winter. Some of these structures stay year round, and they look really cool when they've got snow falling on them. All right. So here we have some Bellwort. This is a sort of an unusual wildflower. It's one of the few that I can remember the Latin name on, uvularia. So, you know, the uvula, that's the little thing we've got dangling at the back of our throat. The powers that be that were naming things back in the day looked at how this plant dangles and thought, oh, that reminds me of a yellow uvula. So, this was growing along with, looks like we've got some toothwort down there in the lower left, and is that some Solomon seal popping up there on the right? There were some Dutchman's breeches as well. It was just a wonderful, this is a fantastic time to get out. I saw on one of the local, what's happening in, I forget if it was Batavia, Geneva, St. Charles, one of the local Facebook pages, somebody was complaining about the dreary weather we've been having. It's so cold, it's so wet. Oh, I tell you, this weather has been the best for fostering our springtime wildflowers and keeping them in this sort of a state. They're benefiting from all the moisture, and then the cool temperatures are they're slowing down their progression. So we're seeing the flowers for longer this year. I don't know if you remember last year, it was warm, it was dry. People in general, I think, liked that weather, but it was terrible for our local flowers. There was a lot of flowers that really, the colors did not last. There was a lot of wilting. The foliage suffered as well. So I, for one, am kind of happy about all the rain we've been having, because it gives us displays like this. Now this is, we mentioned this last year. This is the trail with the gnomes, and there seems to be at least 2 and maybe 3 gnome contributors. These were new since last year, and they're quite, whoever is putting this style of gnome up is they must have a paint set, because they're much more colorful than some of the gnomes that have appeared there in the past. But it was fun to walk along, and some were they blended in very closely with the grain or the texture of the wood or the bark. But then some, like Ma and Pa gnome here, stood out quite easily they're pretty easy to see, but it's just another little feature of walking along this stretch of bike trail. Okay, so now we're gonna have a little glimpse into what life is like at Casa Otto on any given day. True confessions, I do not check my mail every day, as I know I should. So stuff tends to move into my mailbox. I've had, last summer when it was dry, the earwigs found that the dark, sort of shaded environment of my mailbox was a great place to hang out. I was going through the junk mail over the weekend, and I saw what I at first thought was a dead spider, and I was kind of bummed, and I was thinking, oh, see, Pam, this is why you need to check your mail more often. You don't want the spiders to get squished as the mail gets packed into your box. Well, then I looked again, and I realized this was not a dead spider, but this was an exoskeleton. So somewhere in my mailbox or close by, there is a bigger, shinier, newer looking spider. So I was pretty excited about that. I think this is another running crab spider, just looking at the shape of it. I actually got a little too curious, but I learned something in the process. I was poking around. I was looking at trying to figure out what kind of spider it was, and I flipped it over and I broke it. So you can see the legs snapped off there, but the reason they broke is because the exoskeleton was affixed to this piece of junk mail with a little bit of silk. So this actually answered a question that I'd always wondered about when a spider sheds. How do they crawl out of that exoskeleton how do they, like a snake, when a snake sheds, they will find something with texture, some rocks, or maybe a branch of some sort, something that will grab onto that skin as they slither out of it, and they leave then the shed skin behind. But with a spider, I always wondered, well, how do they pull themselves out of it without it coming along with it? How do they get it to stick to something? Because you see these skins, different places, these shed exoskeletons. Well, in this case, and probably in most other cases too, the spider must put down a little pad of sticky silk, and then that keeps the legs in place, and then they can pull themselves out and walk away and leave the shed skin behind. There you go. Yet another reason why it takes me forever to get anything done. Going through junk mail took probably a good 15 or 20 minutes longer after I made that discovery. But now we know, right? Okay, so this is just a little bit of a rant on Saturday. So we've left the junk mail behind. This is actually at Pottawatomie Park. The Natural Resources Commission in St. Charles hosted a Arbor Day cleanup there. We had several of our student commissioners recruit several students from the local high schools to help get the trash. Our parks crew actually does a really good job of keeping the main part of the park clean, but Pottawatomie, there's a railroad berm, not an Esker, but a railroad berm at the south end of the park, and a lot of trash gets blown up in there over the course of several seasons. So it was nice to have a good group of students to climb up, get in and up on that embankment and pull out a lot of trash. Well, I pulled this out because this is a Mylar balloon. You can see the black ribbon. You can't see what it was. There's no pattern left, but the Mylar itself does not degrade. And when you see on TV people doing memorials, I know they're hurting and they want to have that imagery of their loved one rising up, into the heavens. But then they let these balloons go, and they're really just letting litter go up into the sky, because those balloons do come down. Even the ones that biodegrade, we found them at Hickory Knolls. People will tie a balloon to one of the signs in the park that leads up to the nature center, and if they don't take it down at the end of their event, as the balloon loses air and it flops over the sign, it breaks down into like a gummy material, but it doesn't completely go away. Then of course the ribbons, I know the balloon industry has defended balloon releases, saying the balloons degrade, and then they make sure in a large release that they're not putting ribbons on those. But I see on the news when someone's died and they do a balloon release, a lot of them do have ribbons, and those ribbons do not go anywhere. So anyway, just a little rant. I know you guys are not the ones letting balloons go, but if you are aware of people who are making plans like that, maybe you could remind them it's not such a good idea, because they really don't go to heaven, and they end up causing a tangled mess like this, and potentially a hazard to wildlife too. So there were a lot of goose feathers in the park. I suspect maybe there's one less goose at Pottawatomie Park than there used to be. I was looking at the feathers, and then I looked more closely, and I saw that this feather actually had a little creature on it. I apologize, this isn't the best picture, but it is just a little heads up. Caterpillars are coming out and becoming active. This is, I believe, an eastern tent caterpillar. But it's not in its tent. I don't know. I looked around. I didn't see any other sign of caterpillars looking like this one. These are those caterpillars that spin the silk webs in trees. They tend to be. I've often seen them in fruit trees like crabapple trees, but I think they have a number of different leaves that they will feed on. This is a caterpillar that, because it's fuzzy, it has a built-in protection against a lot of birds that might try to eat it. But one bird that does eat fuzzy caterpillars is blue jays. So we did have blue jays at Pottawatomie Park. I don't know. I just left the caterpillar on the goose feather, so I don't know, if it was able to survive or not. But it puzzled me that there was just one, and it's fairly good size. So I need to do a little more investigating. I thought that at the end of the season they turned into moths, and that this caterpillar overwintered as an egg. But keep your eyes open. So it's a bluish fuzzy caterpillar, and it has some prominent yellow stripes on it. If you see those in your neighborhood, that's what you're looking at, is the eastern tent caterpillar. Not quite time yet for gypsy moth. Not quite time yet for spongy moths, but once I start seeing those, I'll give you an update. Shouldn't be too much longer. If we get some warm weather, we'll probably start seeing them as we get later into May. So one of the nice things about doing a litter sweep in the springtime is you get a chance to look for mushrooms. But one of the bad things is there's a lot of shapes out there that sort of imitate the pitted look of the morel, which is our most prized springtime mushroom. So that being a railroad embankment at Pottawatomie, I actually have seen morels coming up over there, but this is some of the rock that tumbled down from the gravel of the old rail bed. There's a lot. I don't know if this is lava rock with all these little pits in it, but if you're looking for morels near railroad beds, just be prepared for the extra challenge of having your eye go towards pitted rocks like these. All right, so the afternoon of last Saturday was Geneva Chamber of Commerce annual coffee crawl. This is one more little rant. This is what happens when this tree is allowed to bloom and then go to seed. This is a Bradford pear, or Callery pear, they're sometimes called. It's an ornamental that was planted widely going back maybe 20 years or so. And it's a tree that I know in St. Charles, our urban forestry management plan now calls for it to be banned. I did have a gentleman at the cleanup that morning say that it looks like his neighbor just had one planted on his parkway. So I want to double check on that. But for the most part, cities are discouraging or outright banning the planting of these trees because look at how prolifically they seed. I know here in St. Charles, the Harvest Hills subdivision, which is on the far west side of town, it's just east of Hickory Knolls. There are a lot of these pear trees that were planted there when that subdivision was built. And we are continually either pulling out or herbiciding the young pear trees that are showing up on our park property right across the street along where Otter Cove is, and then heading up towards Hickory Knolls. So it is, as you go farther south, I think the warmer climate really helps favor the growth of these pear trees too. And yeah, it's just something as gorgeous and as much emphasis as this city of Geneva puts on its trees in its downtown area. I really wish they'd made a different choice. All right, rant over. Let's move on. Saturday evening, I went for a walk, and I saw, if you look right in the middle of this picture, you see a striped body. We are going to focus on that little creature. And Anne and Ralph, I thought of you. I think this is the bee that you have in your yard. Let's watch as a springtime bee. This is, I believe, it's one of our native ground-dwelling bees. I want to say the genus is Collides, and they excavate holes. So this is not the sort of stinging insects like we see later on when the yellow jackets are coming out in droves. Oh boy, I hope this is going to play. Well, I'll just keep talking, and hopefully the video will kick in here in just a second. These are solitary bees that come out early in the springtime. They are important pollinators for some of those springtime wildflowers that we talked about last week and again this week. The female will excavate a chamber down into the ground. She goes down several inches, and she provisions that chamber with pollen and nectar, and then she lays an egg on top of that, and then that egg hatches, and then that larvae develops over the course of the coming year. It pupates in late winter, early spring, and then once we start to get some warmer temperatures, that little bee comes out and the cycle starts all over again. All right, clearly this is not going the way I wanted to, so let's try it again. Super cool. I wanted you to see how this bee digs its hole. If I go to the next, and no, that's the cool clouds. So, and I can't get to the, let's see, maybe if I do this. Is that, nope, that doesn't do it either. Well, let me see, maybe if I'm going to try exiting out of the full screen. Nope. Try one more time. It's like those technical difficulties we used to see. You know, they'd put the test pattern screen on the TV. Well, anyway, if you happen to be in your yard, the points I wanted to make here was that this is a group of bees, and we have lots and lots, actually, of native pollinators, native bees that live solitarily in the ground, and they can't excavate their burrows in mulch. They need to get down into the soil. They can't go through turf grass. They don't go through ground cover. They need bare patches of soil. So as we're looking at our yardscapes and what we have planned for the springtime, if you could keep these insects in mind and leave them little, they don't take up much room, but even the bare patches in between the turf grass in your lawn, if you've got a patchy lawn like, well, I know I do, it's actually pretty good habitat for these bees. You can see, so this is the still shot, and you can see there's grass in this lawn, but it's not super thick, and is just what these bees need. They also, people pay to have their lawns aerated, and that's another function separate from their own life cycle, but another ecological service they provide for those of us with lawns to maintain. All right. not sure how to work around that, so we'll just leave that. Sorry about that. Maybe if I can drop it into a slideshow next week, we'll watch it then. Some very cool clouds called Mammatus Clouds came out after the storms that we had on Saturday. This was in downtown St. Charles. I also saw Tom Skilling was showing some of these on his weather broadcast that night too. So these typically appear, and I'm not a meteorologist, but they, from what I understand, these do come out after we've had a bout of severe weather. So it was really cool, and hopefully you got a chance to see some for yourself. Just wanted to give you a really quick update on mama killdeer. So killdeer eggs take anywhere from 22 to 28 days to hatch. And I kind of think maybe this is the killdeer that has positioned herself on the path up against a log in our nature play area next to Hickory Knolls. I kind of think her eggs might take a little bit longer because of the cool weather we've been experiencing. She did today. It was at least day 22. Certainly been, I know it's been 22 days since we first became aware of her being there. She may have laid them, she might be on day 23 or 24. So any day these eggs should be hatching. It is, though, kind of comical. We've had over the last couple of weeks at Hickory Knolls, we've had class after class of West Aurora kindergarten students coming out for field trips, and part of their visit to Hickory Knolls includes a little time in the nature play area. So hundreds and hundreds of kids, in addition to the Hickory Knolls preschoolers that go out and play in the nature play area every day. This mama has, and actually dad too, has stood up to all of this human commotion going on around her. But I had to laugh. Our building supervisors they keep adding to the cones that are protecting this family, and the birds don't seem to mind it. There's the orange cones here. The nature preschool, they bring out their colored cones. This is, I would say the other day we must have had a dozen cones in increasingly wider circles going around this bear. And they do their little killdeer noises from time to time. If they think anyone's getting too close. But I think as much as it's not, a pristine wild setting, it's a crushed lime path next to wood chips and logs that we've laid down. This is a sort of setting that I think more and more birds are looking at as a safe place. They've realized that humans aren't so much of a threat, and this is an area that's less likely to have fox and coyotes and other things that predate ground nesting birds. She seems to be doing just fine there, and they're both mom and dad are able to tolerate this regular commotion from the marauding humans. So anyway, I will give you an update, but I'm thinking we're getting very, very close to the time when these birds are going to be hatching. Killdeer, they are, when they come out of the egg, they are what are called precocious young, which means that they are able, once their feathers dry off from coming out of the egg, they can walk and they can follow mom and dad around. Mom and dad show them how to feed. They can start feeding themselves. Much the same way baby ducks and baby geese follow their parents. They're not quite ready to be on their own yet. They don't have flight feathers, but they are much farther along than the other types of bird babies, which are the altricial young. That's what we see in, say, robin's nest or cardinal's nest. Those are birds that they have very little down. Their eyes are closed. They're completely dependent on their parents for everything for the first couple of weeks of their life. But Anyway, just a little update on our killdeer family. Um, I'm going to go ahead and stop this share because I see we've got some chats here we want to talk about. If it's slow, it's millipede. If it's fast, it's a centipede. Yeah. Um, I can't remember if I told you guys the story about the desert centipede when I was out at, oh gosh, where was it? Carlsbad Caverns out in New Mexico. This was several years ago. I was in the gift shop of Carlsbad Caverns, and there were two college students that kind of seemed to be making fun of some of the tourists that were there. And I saw this giant centipede. It had to be 8 inches, 10 inches long on the floor. It was a gorgeous thing. It was a dark chocolate brown, and it had legs that were kind of not candy cane, candy corn colored. They were orange and yellow. Absolutely gorgeous and absolutely huge. So I thought this was something that I thought it was a toy that they were selling in the gift shop. And I went over and I asked the two guys. I said, "So are you guys just messing with us with this thing, or can I buy one of these?" And they looked at it. One of them actually said, "Oh bleep!" when he looked at it. It was not a toy. It was a desert centipede that had made its way into the gift shop. We tried to catch it. I took my little paper bag with my postcards in it, and we tried to shoo the centipede in. But you're right, Diane. It took off. It went over the top of my hand, and it went behind the bookcase where the other college kids said another "oh bleep" kind of word, and I I went on my way. It was really cool, but they are really fast. Okay, so Kim, I see you're saying this is a time I'm going to share a couple of news items here. Kim is saying that the pen sedge is one of the plants that is going to be for sale at the Wild Ones plant sale. So let me share the news of that. Wild Ones plant sale. This year it's back to being in person, and it is no longer, it used to be up at Hawthorne Hill in Elgin. The new location is at Gray Willows Farm, which is on Corn Road. It's one of the Campton Township open space properties. Really cool. If you are looking for native plants, the Wild Ones sale, fantastic place to buy plants, and this is a fantastic place to explore as well. So if you head out there 10 to 2 on Saturday, May 14th, you allow some extra time to go exploring as well. So mark your calendars for that. And also, same day, I'm sorry, week before, this coming Saturday, so Saturday, May 7th, this is the Batavia Plain Dirt Gardeners annual plant sale. They're back in person too at the Bethany Lutheran Church in Batavia. Saturday, May 7th from 9 until noon. These are plants that we know will grow in this area because they are from the club members' own gardens. It's a nice selection. I've been to the sale before. It's a nice selection of native plants, ornamental plants, and also vegetables. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop for a lot of different garden needs, check out the Plain Dirt Gardener sale. The proceeds to this help the club maintain the Wildflower Sanctuary in downtown Batavia. So that's a good one as well. Mark your calendars for both of those events. And I don't know if there will be sedges at the Plain Dirt Gardeners, but Kim, as you pointed out, your pen sedge is one of Kim, what is it, 100? How many plants do you have at the Wild Ones sale?
We have
Over 100 species.
over 100 different species, and it's in plugs and pints, and then we also have some leftovers from majestic oaks, which is shrubs and small trees.
Fantastic. Yeah, so two big two big sales coming up. I will give you more information on our Hickory Knoll sale as it comes closer. We're not selling our stuff till June, so whatever you can't get from the Plain Dirt Gardeners or the wild ones, keep in mind for the Park District sale that's coming up as we get into June. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna click off of this and off of that. I've got a little, just a quick little slideshow. Oops, let's get back to these. Chats first. Jerry wanted to know, when will most insect eggs have hatched, holding off on clearing out leaf litter, socks until then? Yeah, I think there's still a lot of things that have not come out yet because of the cool temperatures. I would, if you can stand it, Jerry, another couple of weeks. I know I was looking. I broke off. What did I break off in the yard the other day? Oh, some of the old pokeweed that was in the back, and it had broken. I didn't take it out of the yard. It was in the way of the buckthorn shoots I was trying to pull out, so I did break it down. But if you can wait another week or two, once we get into days where we have solid temperatures in the 60s, I think things are going to start coming out, and we can, if you need to do a cleanup, then it would be safe to do then. But we're still getting some pretty cool evening temperatures. Today, the high, I think, was only in the 40s. So I would use 60 if we get a few days of 60s as a cutoff. That's what I'd recommend.
Thanks. I'll hold off. I'll hold off.
I know, it's hard.
I know, it really is.
Yeah, Meredith, any update on the snakeskin from Elgin and armadillos in King County? So no word from our friend Gary. I was tempted to text him the day we had 80 degrees. I think that was a week ago Saturday, but I also thought, well, if the snake came out, he would definitely let me know. And I have not heard anything. So I do want to text him. I actually had someone shared with me a gadget he might want to use. It's one of those cameras that plumbers use. They send down in a pipe, and it's got a camera with a light on it. Relatively inexpensive, and I thought that might be a good way for him to see if there's anything in that culvert in front of his yard. So no updates on the snakeskin and no armadillos yet, but I remember, so this was before we moved into Hickory Knolls, and Hickory opened in 2011, so this must have been like 2009 or 2010. I had written a column about armadillos because one had been sighted in Cook County back then. The thinking at the time, and I think that's still the case, is that they can get up this far, but they can't survive our winters. I don't know if that's changing up, but I did just see something recently about how they are advancing. When I wrote that column 10 years ago, they were ranked as the fastest advancing mammal in North America. Their range was expanding something like a mile a year where they could be found. So I would say that it could happen, especially as we get further on in the year, maybe into July or August, if they are, moving along. I might see one here. So yeah, I remember I got scolded when I wrote about them before. A gentleman, he pronounced the word armadillo, and I don't know enough about the animal to know if that's the proper spelling or not, but he said that in my article on armadillos that because I thought it was kind of an interesting phenomenon, the fact that these things were showing up here, and he said that we should not be excited because armadillos harbor what is it, Hansen's disease? What's the other name for leprosy? And he said that having armadillos in close proximity to schools could result in our children getting leprosy. This is what happens when I get a voicemail and it's come in. I remember it was 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. This guy called. I might still have that voicemail in the archives. If I can find it, maybe I'll play it. It was kind of a fun one. Anyway, so no sightings yet, but yeah, keep your eyes open, because it's another thing where we can not say, we can't say never anymore. Sarah, yes, Sarah points out that the Plain Dirt Gardener sale does sell out. I remember I went there in, was it 2018? And I got there about 10:30 or so, and a lot of the plants had already moved on out. So yeah, if you're planning to hit that one up, get there early. Starts at 9 this Saturday morning. All right, I just have a really quick slideshow, kind of like actually along the lines of armadillos. This was a talk that I delivered today to the St. Charles Kiwanis, but I wanted to let you guys know too that there's some animals that we need to be keeping our eyes open for, things that we didn't used to think occurred in this area, and they're a possibility now. Susie, you texted me yesterday that it looked like a bobcat ran in front of your car as you were driving along. I thought it might be good for a little refresher on what to look for if you think you see a bobcat. Picture a house cat on stilts. These things have long legs and a long body, but size-wise is 16 to 20 pounds, so we're not talking enormous. In 2002, this map shows the dark gray. There was a decent chance of sighting a bobcat in those areas. The bobcat population now has grown to a point where they are allowing hunting in much of Illinois, the western, northwestern, and then the southern portions. They actually have a bobcat season now. Northeastern part of Illinois, we're not quite there yet, but look at how the number of deer hunters, and I love how they phrase this, the number of successful deer hunters, because those are the ones that have to check in and report what their deer harvest is. But 16% of deer hunters saw bobcats, and that's only through 2018. They're definitely undergoing some favorable trends in their numbers. This was also from 2018. This was a game camera from a little bit west of here. A woman sent this picture, and this is what I wanted to point out. Bobcats have white on the back of their ears. The back of the ear is black, and then there's a white spot in the middle of each ear. You can't quite see the tail on this image, but this image shows you that bob tail. So it's not necessarily missing 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches. There's some variation in the length of the tail, but and then the markings too. Both of these pictures were taken in the summer, so we're looking at summer coats. But there's usually some pattern. Wintertime, the hair is going to be much thicker. There might be spots, there might be stripes, but the things you want to look for are those markings. If you can see the back of the ears, and then also look for that bob tail. Now, with that said, this was a video I received. Watch on the left here, the creature that's approaching the sidewalk there. This came as part of an email. The subject was bobcat with a question mark. Let's look at the behavior of this animal. It's not in any sort of a hurry. It's not acting in an elusive way. It's not trying to avoid detection. It is just going for a stroll. This is a neighborhood cat that lost its tail. I don't know. Yes, I've always heard about bobcats that take shelter underneath the hood of a car, and then the tail gets caught up in a fan belt or something. I don't know what happened to this cat, but this is not a bobcat. So the lack of a tail doesn't always mean bobcat. You need to look for those other markings as well. Tracks, it's not winter time anymore, but tracks without claw marks and a generally rounded sort of character oftentimes indicate a cat. Here on the left, I took that picture by Fearson Creek. This was in Leroy Oaks a few years back. Nobody's told me yes, that's a bobcat, but nobody's told me no, it's not. You can see the footprint sunk pretty deeply into the mud. There's no claw marks in front of those toes, and it was big too. There's our 2 5/8 inch unit of measure, and this track was close to 2 inches in length. So that would be more of a bobcat size as opposed to a domestic or feral cat size. So with that, bobcats, keep them on your radar. They are most commonly seen either in the overnight hours or very early in the morning or around dusk. Middle of the day, they're less common because they are really, really good at avoiding detection. They don't want us to see them. But keep your eyes open. We used to say probably not, but now we're saying, yeah, it could happen. Same with barn owls. We did a program on these birds last summer. They were at one time endangered in Illinois. In the early 2000s, there was a reintroduction program that was tried, and it did not really succeed. Most of the young barn owls that were released in Illinois they either died or they got the heck out of here. So reintroduction was not the way to encourage these birds. However, the Endangered Species Protection Board, they looked at the success that Iowa was having and the success that Missouri was having. And so they decided to copy what was going on in those states. And in the span of 10 years, this bird went from being endangered to being removed from that list because of these things, nest boxes. The big problem with barn owls was their loss of habitat. This was a bird that prior to European settlement, they had lived in tree cavities and natural ledges. And then when barns went up all over the state, well, they took advantage and they moved in. There was plentiful shelter. There was lots to eat in the form of mice, and they did really well. But now our wooden barns are disappearing. What the Endangered Species Board saw happening and what they're now advocating is putting up nest boxes. When we did our program last summer, I asked Bill Grazer at the Forest Preserve District, would it hurt to put some barn owl boxes up in Kane County? He said, no, give it a try. They are not too far away. There's been barn owls sighted in some of the counties, I want to say in Will County, also possibly in Kendall County, Miss Bonnie. So give it a try. This is another species where we are no longer saying, nah, we're saying, yes, maybe. It could be. With the osprey, it's not so much the ospreys, but to keep your eyes open for osprey nests. I might have mentioned this before, but these birds are moving into cell towers, and they're trying to get a handle on just how many osprey are nesting on these towers. This is over in West Chicago. Here you can see they've just piled a bunch of sticks on top of all the cords. There's not really a platform in there. They made their own platform out of sticks. But if you see a nest and a cell tower, please let me know. We're trying to get a handle on how many of these we have in the area. And then, of course, we've got our otters. There was a fantastic program last week from Chris Anker, who is one of the lead wildlife biologists in the Urban Otter Research Project, which is a companion study to the Urban Coyote Research Project that's been going on for over 20 years. This is an animal that back in the 1990s, about 260 some were released on the Wabash, the Kaskaskia, and the Illinois River watersheds. We've also had some migrating in from neighboring states, and they are making their way into the greater Chicago area. So, as little as 10 years ago, we used to say, I don't know how likely it is, but now we're seeing, Chris estimated the population at as many as 50,000 otters statewide. So they're not muskrats, they're not beavers, and they're not mink. Now, of these three animals, the mink would be the closest relation. They're both in the weasel family. Muskrats and otters, muskrats and beavers, they have a body shape that's large and oval, and they don't move in that sinewy, wavy movement that we see when we see it in a mink or an otter moving. Pay attention if you see something swimming in the water. Otter will frequently kind of do a little kick dive, and you'll see their tail. You'll see their head bob up, and then you'll see their tail pop up as they disappear underneath the water. They don't have the rat-like tail of the muskrat. They don't have the big flat tail of the beaver, and they are considerably larger than a mink. Our mink are maybe 18 inches, not including the tail, and otter are more like 30 inches or so plus a tail. So much larger creatures. These were pictures from Crabtree Nature Center up in South Barrington. There was a female and I believe 4 young that were in the pond up there. This was our local sighting. This was on the Fox River up by Tecawitha Woods. I believe this was now 3 years ago. This little bump here next to the shoreline, if we enlarge it, we see that. But if we find an image, a much sharper image, this was an otter that hung out for close to a week's time back then. During the talk last week, we learned that otters can show up pretty much anywhere. This was some otter sign that was sent to me. This was up at James Pate Phillips State Park. You can see the large wet body and tail, and then the large tracks on the bridge going over Brewster Creek. During the talk last week, we learned that while the fishermen were fishing below the dam, I should say fisher people, below the dam in St. Charles, there was an otter feeding on a rock down there, and nobody noticed it except for the wildlife biologist that observed it. After the talk, I had a person come up to me to say that the same time period in the summertime when she would walk in downtown St. Charles in the evening, crossing the pedestrian bridge, she saw an otter feeding on the rocks here where these kids are playing. So again, it's an animal that I think we need to be on the lookout for. I would love to get some photo documentation, and if not that, I'd love to hear some good stories of sightings. So please keep your eyes open. I think that would be utterly amazing to talk about. All right, let's stop this. And let's see. Yes, Hansen's disease, leprosy. Thanks, Diane. Yeah, that was those armadillos. We got to look out for them and the diseases they carry. That's what I had for you this evening. I apologize. I didn't have a chance to pull together the formal slideshow. Hopefully, things will get things will quiet down again in the next week or so. It's just been a busy spring, but got to see what's happening out there in the natural world. Shared some of that with you. Appreciate your time. Does anybody else have anything they'd care to share this evening? If not, we'll do it again next week. Thanks so much for your time. Stay safe, stay warm. Those spring temperatures, I know they're on their way, but in the meantime, enjoy the coolness and the dampness, because it means our wildflowers are going to hang out with us that much longer. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Right.
Very
Thanks,
interesting.
Pam.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Chris,
Bye, Pam.
welcome back. Take care.